I know you've been waiting for it. It is time for the Star Wars review, The Last Jedi, Episode 8. Here we go. For approximately an hour, we're going to cover this whole thing, stem to stern, and there's a lot to talk about. And there are going to be spoilers, and I'll admit, this is a movie where maybe you really don't want spoilers. But maybe you do. You know, honestly, like this is the first movie in a while where I can remember where, yeah, I tried to avoid, what was like any reveals of what happens in this movie. I'll put that right out front. And I know a lot of people did that, okay? Because I was expecting, and not just expecting, but it wasn't even insinuated. I think it was blatantly stated by the production team, by Rian Johnson, the director, by actors, involved, Mark Hamill, by a whole bunch of people. Look, this is really going to shake the foundations of the Star Wars universe. There's going to be things that you just won't believe. This is going to be shocking, blah, blah, blah. And so there was, very explicit appeals to, hey, you want to go into this knowing as little as possible. Okay, fine. But after seeing it, I wouldn't have minded if I caught some spoilers. I'll admit, it wouldn't have been as shocking, but maybe I would have felt a little bit different about it if I actually knew what was going to go down. And the idea of knowing what was going to happen in this movie speaks very much to how I feel about this movie overall. But let's start talking about it. And I'll tell you, I've been waiting a good long while to talk about this one. In fact, I say this every time. Or every year, because, we get a new Star Wars movie every year. I always, it's so funny because, well, actually, we're going to get two this year, because understand, Last Jedi just came out. Don't forget, in 5 months, in May, we get Solo, a Star Wars story Solo, which is the Han Solo kind of prequel film. So that's coming up in no time. And then we have to wait a year and a half for the next movie, because they want to get back into where these movies come out in May. And I'm not even going to get into that. I wish they would have stuck in December. I actually very much enjoy that. It gives me something to look forward to as a Jew. I'm only ethnically. I don't practice Judaism. But no, I'm kidding. But anyway, I say this every time. It's like, oh, this is so tough. I gotta get behind a microphone and I've got to talk about Star Wars for an hour. Oh, woe is me. Please take me away from this torture that I have to talk about Star Wars. Of course, I'm kidding, because I love Star Wars. I mean, next to Star Trek, it's like one of the biggest things in my life as far as entertainment goes. It's so foundational to so much of what I do, and inspirational. I mean, I just absolutely, love Star Wars. So it really is actually, obviously, it's an absolute joy, and I'm honored that so many people actually want to hear what I have to say about Star Wars, because these are some of my most listened to episodes every year when I do my reviews of Star Wars. People are always wondering, and I'll cut them out and make them into YouTube videos, and I'll put them up on my YouTube channel, the segment where I do the review of it, because people they even listen to them over and over again, which, wow, I'm really honored by that. But hey, anyway, it's so crazy. I have the Star Wars update, which I do every month for Sovryn Tech patrons on Patreon, where I cover, I cover everything that's going on in Star Wars, because I literally consume everything. Even before, so there was a book. So The Last Jedi came out. The premiere was it last weekend? Okay. For a lot of people saw it on Thursday. They saw it on the 14th, because theaters can play it a little, they could technically play it at midnight, but then they got to the point where, well, actually they could play it on, maybe as early as 7 p.m. or 6 p.m. or something like that. And they could have multiple showings on a Thursday. So even if it technically was supposed to be released on the 15th, you could have caught it on the 14th. And I did. I pre-ordered my tickets, months previous. But understand, on the 15th, I had my, a Star Wars book came out on the 15th. I mean, it was for, young readers, but it's a canon. It's, it's a work that has bearing in the Star Wars universe in general. It's a tie-in novel, and it's for, tie-in to The Last Jedi. It had to do with Rose Tico and her sister Paige Tico. which again, spoiler alerts, spoiler alerts, spoiler alerts. Okay. Paige Tico in some ways opens up this film. So, and Rose Tico, played by Kelly Marie Tran, who did a fantastic job. She's a major part of this. But like I read, as soon as that book came out, I read the entire thing in that same day. And it was, it's not, it's for younger readers, but it's not necessarily a smaller book. But I read that in the same day. On the 15th, I also got, and this is going to have some bearing on some of the things we talk about. I also got the Star Wars The Last Jedi, the visual dictionary, and the Incredible Cross Sections book, which are the two reference books for the movie. I have those, I got those as well on the 15th. I've already gone all through those. Okay. Look, when something Star Wars drops, I am all over it. I'm on it. Okay, you are getting, understand with this review, you are getting a walking encyclopedia of Star Wars knowledge. And I know some people like to claim that. I'm not saying I'm the measuring stick. I'm not Steve Sansweet or something, but you could use me as a fill-in for a measuring stick if you needed to when it comes to that sort of shit, okay? And I don't mean to boast, but when I know what I'm fucking talking about, I know what I'm talking about. So, but I'm this way with all franchises, Star Trek, Terminator, Stargate, all of it. Like I consume everything. I'm surrounded by it, So, okay, let's talk about The Last Jedi. Let's get into it. I'll just start off. What did I think of the movie? How about we do that first? Because I think that might be, that is the least interesting point about all of this is what it is. Did I like the movie or did I not like the movie? I loved it. I thought it was great. Like, this is a genuinely great movie on any metric. It helps if you know a thing or two about Star Wars, but it is completely enjoyable even if you don't know a ton about Star Wars. Even if you, maybe this could be this might even be like the first Star Wars film you saw. There's points to it that might not make a whole ton of sense, but like if the first Star Wars movie you ever really saw was like The Force Awakens and then you saw this, you were in for a real treat. This movie is amazing on its own merits. It's Rian Johnson, the director, all of the actors involved. Of course, this is Carrie Fisher's last official role. Mark Hamill, all of them, John Boyega, Oscar Isaac, Daisy Ridley, go down the fucking list. They knocked it out of the park. Just an incredible, incredible film. Okay. The Last Jedi is just top notch. I don't think that it can hold itself as, say, one of the greatest movies outside of Star Wars, one of the greatest movies ever made, as to where I think something like The Empire Strikes Back could certainly make that claim. My favorite Star Wars movie is Return of the Jedi. But like Empire Strikes Back, I totally get it. I totally recognize like that movie stands up as a great movie, like in microcosm, and that it is a perfect film. In fact, it's one of the rare perfect films where the effects are pretty much perfect, where everything, everything about it is just perfect. You have perfect moments, perfect scenes that are positively seamless. That just stand above. You can put The Empire Strikes Back in microcosm as one of the great, in the top 10 films in AFI's list if you wanted to. A New Hope and Return of the Jedi don't even have to be there. It's just that fucking good, So now The Last Jedi is not at that level, because even Return of the Jedi is not necessarily at that level, okay? But this is a great movie. On every single metric that you could count a great movie, Star Wars The Last Jedi is one of the best things you could lay your money down on. If you were waiting to hear me say that on whether or not you were going to go see it, go ahead, stop the podcast, go see it. It's awesome. It is a genuinely amazing film. But that said, now, and I said this during my review, the first Star Wars review I ever did on Sovryn Tech. I said this during The Force Awakens. Just because you love something doesn't mean that you can't critique the fuck out of it. And there is a lot to critique about this movie. So now I think the next question that probably a lot of people would ask, well, is it better than The Force Awakens? And I kind of can't believe I'm going to say this, but no, it's not. It's not better than The Force Awakens. And I totally buy into the idea that The Force Awakens is just a remake of A New Hope, that's okay, because I think A New Hope, could stand a remake. So like that criticism isn't necessarily a criticism to me. I understand there's a point to that. There's a purpose to that, to re-hitting a lot of those notes. And The Last Jedi, look, I don't know how much stronger language I could use, because I'm concerned that people are going to hear me critiquing this, and then they're going to say, "Oh, well, what? You come on, this movie was great." I told you it was great. I told you it was awesome. It's amazing. It's wonderful. It is an incredible film. I'm not saying that, but just because it's all those things doesn't mean there aren't problems. Okay, it doesn't mean that there aren't things that are worth talking about, are worth considering and breaking down, because there's a lot that is. So this was certainly hit a lot of notes, did similar to not as, I don't think as directly. As directly, I think, as The Force Awakens took, notes from and beats from A New Hope. This certainly took beats and notes from Return of the Jedi and Empire Strikes Back, both of them. I mean, and there's they're so frequent, there's so many to count. I mean, the Battle of Crate was pretty much the Battle of Hoth, but with B-wings in place of the snow speeders, right? Or what looked like B-wings. In fact, if you read the incredible cross sections, it even tells you that they based those speeders in universe, not what the producers of the movie did, but in universe. They based it on the Verpine model and all this, and the Moncal actually based the B-wing off of the design on Crate and all this. I mean, it's really the connections are there. I'm not just making this shit up. And understand those reference books are also canon. Okay, they are, what's said in those means something to the Star Wars universe, and what it says is fact. So that's why I got them. That's why I pre-ordered them 3 months ago on Amazon. They showed up at my door on the 15th. Of course, I had already seen the movie, which I'm kind of glad, because those reference books, by the way, they're pretty good. They definitely give you spoilers, they tell you what happens in the movies in many ways. So, just as well that they didn't get released until the 15th in that case. So anyway, so The Last Jedi takes a lot of beats from The Empire Strikes Back. Like I said, you had the Battle of Crate, which is pretty much the Battle of Hoth with B-wings. You have the reveal of parentage, which is just no, I am your father. That kind of crap. There's a lot. There's so many to hit at, that are a part of this. Even, running off to some shitty planet to get training to be a Jedi. That's Hoth to Dagobah, right? And, where Rey goes to train with Luke, or thinks she's going to go train with Luke, blah, blah, blah. So the hardest part with this review is there's so much that I want to say, and there's so much that I want to break down. It's going to be tough, in what order to take it on, and in what order to really sort of get into it. But, one of my favorite things whenever I do a movie review on Sovryn Tech is to actually start off talking about the music. The music in this. So with The Force Awakens, it actually took me a little while to warm up to that soundtrack. The soundtrack felt a little weird to me. It was great. It's John Williams, but it took me a little while to warm up to that. Not so with The Last Jedi. If we were basing the movie review on soundtracks, oh yeah, The Last Jedi is way better than Force Awakens. This is a fantastic soundtrack. And the inclusion of a lot more themes from the original trilogy, like the Luke and Leia theme from Return of the Jedi, of course the Force theme or Yoda's theme from Empire Strikes Back, all of that totally fits in very nicely with with Kylo's theme, with Rey's theme that gets used to great effect and isn't such a simple, kind of oboe style theme or whatever the hell they were using to play that, whatever flute they were using there actually. And that works. And of course the Resistance March, which sounds, yes, like we talked about when we reviewed The Force Awakens, which sounds a lot like the Trade Federation March, whatever. That worked to great effect in this. It was just an amazing, the soundtrack's almost like a Star Wars greatest hits. in a very real way. And I was just so, it blew my mind. One thing I did notice while I was sitting through the credits is that it actually said music by John Williams, and it wasn't just John Williams, even though the soundtrack itself, which I have, the soundtrack itself does just credit it to John Williams. It says music by John Williams and William Ross. Now, William Ross, for those that don't know, William Ross has kind of been a secondary guy to John Williams for quite some time. William Ross did a lot of the conducting and maybe even a lot of the scoring for Chamber of Secrets, the Harry Potter movie, and some other films for John Williams. Of course, John Williams, being quite old now, has had back problems as late, so he can't necessarily take the conductor's stand. And William Ross has been filling in to do that. But I thought it was interesting that William Ross was giving an equal, and you've got to watch fully into the credits. Okay, like really deep down. And I think watching the credits in a Star Wars film is very important, because I feel like, or at least George Lucas used to do it. I don't know if they've really done it anymore, and I don't think we'll really know until we get the whole trilogy. But even then, it just might be bullshit anyway. During the prequel era, there were hints of what was to come in the music during the end credits, like during the Phantom Menace, when you get to the last few notes of the end credits, of the music during the end credits, it turns into Darth Vader's theme, the Imperial March, but it's a very small hint, like dun dun dun, like a little piano almost, but it's there. And there's other things that go on that just kind of, it's kind of a replay of what happens in the movie, but then towards the end it becomes foreshadowing, I think, of what is to come. At least that's the brilliance George Lucas brought to the prequels. And yes, he did bring brilliance to the prequels. Okay, KMA. So, I don't know I don't think Disney seems to have that much forethought about things, even though, they don't like to be that subtle. Like they like to do end credit sequences. Obviously or at least not yet, there aren't any end credit sequences in Star Wars films. Though that may end up coming at some point, because one of the critiques, and I might get into it deeper here in a little bit, one of the critiques I would definitely give to The Last Jedi is this is the first Star Wars film of the new films that felt like a Marvel movie, that felt like Disney was really sticking their hands in it. And I do want to talk about that more later, but so if more Marvel movie tropes get stuck into this sort of stuff, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. And I'm not necessarily saying, well, okay, there's aspects of that are unwelcome. There's aspects of it that I don't mind so much. But anyway, I felt that the score in The Force Awakens was kind of subdued, and that's really what took me a while to get used to the soundtrack for The Force Awakens, because it was so kind of toned down, it felt like. Like I wasn't walking out of there necessarily humming so much. Now I want to hum Rey's theme all the time. It just took me a little while to get used to it, to the different style. But The Last Jedi, just no, it wastes no time. You're humming shit right and left. There's musical cues that are going to make you cry in no time. It's really fantastic. And I wonder how much of that was William Ross as compared to John Williams. I am not taking anything away from John Williams. Every conductor, every musician, every music in movies worth its salt has to give credit to John Williams, no matter what it is. Even when you have other greats like Jerry Goldsmith and, Basil Podori and, others. Look, John Williams is the man, let's just call it. So I'm not taking anything away from him, but I wonder just how much of a role William Ross is playing. And which makes me also wonder, I think a lot of us thought that Michael Giacchino would end up being the kind of heir apparent to taking over. He's the guy that scored Rogue One, who ended up scoring Rogue One. That he would be the heir apparent to whatever John Williams was doing as far as Star Wars films. And I love Michael Giacchino's work. I think, everything that he's done, from Star Trek to Speed Racer to, it's a laundry list of films, especially modern ones, where I think he does amazing work. I don't mind if he does take it over, but maybe this William Ross is actually going to end up taking over for John Williams. If he's had such a close relationship for so many years and with so many films with John Williams, it would only make sense. But the music, anyway, spot on. The acting, nothing need be said. Benicio del Toro, everybody involved, everybody was top of their game. Even Billy Lord, even was that Carrie Fisher's daughter, fantastic. Carrie Fisher was awesome in this. And obviously, I could spend a whole episode. I almost did a while back. Saying just, oh man, and yeah, look, watching Carrie Fisher, knowing that this was the last time that was really her up there, that definitely played a part in watching this movie. And there was parts where it was really hard. Like it hits you, it reminds you, and I did a whole tribute to her on Sovryn Tech, so I don't need to cover that ground again, but, she was amazing. So anyway, the acting, phenomenal. Rian Johnson's directing, obviously top notch. Special effects, it's ILM, and Disney and Marvel, it's all the money in the world. You expect perfection, you get it. The one effect, and here's maybe one of the first major spoilers. Let's talk about this effect real quick. The one effect was Yoda. Yes, Yoda is in this movie, voiced by Frank Oz himself, which is really nice. Maybe I've just gotten so used to watching Yoda in the prequels, even though in the prequels they've changed things even on the Blu-rays to make him look more like Empire Strikes Back. Maybe it's because I've watched him so much on the Clone Wars cartoon and even in Rebels and whatever else. I thought Yoda looked kind of weird. Like in fact, I turned to Stephanie. Stephanie and I went and caught this together, of course. And I said, I wouldn't be surprised if they literally brought out the puppet that was used for The Empire Strikes Back. Like that looked like a really old effect. And I don't necessarily want to take anything away from it because of that, but it didn't look that real. Like I don't know, something about it seemed a little off to me. Okay, so that was the only effect though that I would have any complaints about. Like, in fact, they really should, in my opinion, they should have made him a lot more because he comes back as a Force ghost, obviously. I would have made him a lot more translucent. I would have made him look a lot more like he does at the end of Return of the Jedi when he appears at the very end of that as a Force ghost. Instead, he's like way more there. Like there's a lot more of his green. You really see him, and they just put a blue hue around him. Maybe that's what made it look so weird. I don't know. It came off as a very odd effect. The other effect, and this is more a stylistic point, not that the CGI or something was bad, but the stylistic point was very weird. There is, throughout this movie, you find out that Rey and Kylo are bridged through the Force somehow. Actually, you find out exactly how it happens. Snoke's doing it, which we're going to talk about Snoke. The style, this is the one place where I disagreed with Rian Johnson's directing and style. They just wherever they happen to be standing, they'll just turn around and they'll just show the people in these two different places talking to each other. But there's no, I don't know. I would have done some kind of Force ghost effect to show them where they are, that they're in the same spot. But instead they would just do these hard cuts from where Kylo is to Rey is. And it just, and they'd look at the screen like they were talking to somebody else. I thought that it was a very odd choice. I don't think that parlayed very well what exactly was happening. I get it. I understand what's happening completely. And so you could say, well, then you get it. And then the director did it right. But I would have done something a little bit more with that. This is this amazing new Force power where over huge distances. I mean, we've seen this sort of thing before where Luke and Vader could talk to each other in Empire, where Leia could feel Luke in Empire, and all this other stuff, or even in Return. Yeah, I know that it's not necessarily a new power, but for such vast differences, that's where things get kind of interesting. I mean, because if you could detect people over such vast different distances, you think Vader could find Luke anywhere, and he'd find the rebels anywhere. If you can do that kind of bridging and connecting and all that. So, and I get it. Snoke is really, really powerful, but then we've got problems there too. But anyway, to create that bridge. But anyway, yeah, I would have done something different with that effect. And that you could have, because of one of the main reveals and what ends up being one of the coolest parts of the film, where Luke is projecting himself, shall we say. It's he's right there. So I don't know, they could have made that a little more, and it just came off kind of cheap in my opinion. So that's the only those are the only two effects that I had any real issues with. Otherwise the effects, I mean, it's 10 out of 10. and even the Yoda effect, I think that's more of a stylistic choice even too, perhaps. So just 10 out of 10 on the effects. How about I'll toss in another metric, style. Another 10 out of 10. This absolutely felt like a Star Wars movie through and through. Like, I mean, there was, as different as a lot of the choices were in this, we're going to get into those. There was in no point did I feel like I was not watching a Star Wars movie. I was very, very impressed by that. Well, okay, there's one point maybe where I didn't necessarily feel like I was watching a Star Wars movie, but we'll get into that later. Okay. But yeah, I mean, Rian Johnson totally understands the universe. Obviously, the production team involved, John Knoll, all those guys, they know the Star Wars universe, through and through. And it showed, it delivered. Everything looked perfect. Even the newer styles and designs that they put up, it just looked great. I mean, like they got the Star Wars style down. Nowhere near as jarring as, say, when we go from Episode 6 of Return of the Jedi to Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, when it's like, whoa, I get it, this is Star Wars, I trust you, George, but what the hell is this? Like, this doesn't look like Star Wars. Not so with the Last Jedi, and The Force Awakens was the same way, where it looked, it had the right look. Now, as for the story itself, the plot, how all of that, great. Like, so I hope that I am. But there's problems here, okay? But it was great, but I have some issues. Bottom line being, I hope that I have made it abundantly clear. This is an awesome film. I love this film. I am going to watch this movie so many times in my lifetime. You have no idea, okay? I love this movie. So everything I'm about to say going forward, okay, any criticisms, critiques, and all that stuff, please know I love this movie. This movie is awesome. This is one of the best Star Wars movies made. This is just top notch. It's so great. Okay? All right. There we go. We got that. Let us move on. So, because if you think that I'm saying that it's not great, no, I'm saying it's great. I'm just saying that there's outlying issues, and that's where the issues are generally with everything. Something I talk about on Sovryn Tech often is that a lot of things that happen in the tech world, I don't actually like. When a company does X, Y, and Z, I actually don't mind. Okay, what I do mind, where I have issues, is in their marketing often, where they claim they're going to do, they're going to do X, Y, Z, but they actually do A, B, C. Or they oversell the claims or something like that. Marketing is in many ways, like, people don't understand. Marketing, advertising, it's kind of everything. I mean, it really shapes your perceptions of reality in so many ways that, yeah, I mean, and it can be to detriment or to, or to the good. And here's the thing with, oh boy, this is going to be tough to say. Here's the thing with The Last Jedi. What it is a great movie. It is not at all what I expected. And I don't think, and to some degree, there's certain things that I wanted to happen that I just wanted to happen for me personally. And deep down, I knew they wouldn't happen, right? Like Rey turning to the dark side or something like that. Okay, that's what I want. I always want that. I wanted Luke to turn to the dark side. I wanted Leia to turn to the dark side. Like, I want everybody to turn to the dark side. Okay, don't misunderstand me. I know that that's a personal choice, but here's the thing: is that the trailers, the marketing material, including the stories in Entertainment Weekly, the stories in this magazine, that magazine, the tweets from Rian Johnson, all these different things, okay, all these different sources that are totally legit. Like, just watch, go back and watch for a quick example. All those things, in my opinion, portrayed a different movie. Okay, that's my point. But for an example, watch the trailer again. Not the original teaser trailer that came out at D20 or whatever. That was awesome. Like that trailer was great. It just showed you visuals, and you're like, "Ooh, this looks exciting." Watch the official trailer that came out. Okay, that they revealed was that October 9th or whatever. And there were one scene in particular that people were getting all hot and bothered about was at the very end of the trailer, where you see Rey, and Rey says, "I need somebody to show me my place in all of this." and you see Kylo, and then the camera, it switches to Kylo, and you see him extending his hand. Now, people said, oh yeah, that's an actual scene in the movie. Most of us knew, no, that's not an actual scene in the movie. Rey is somewhere completely different, clearly, from where Kylo is, from what you're showing with Kylo. Now that we've seen the movie, we know, yes, those are two completely different scenes. In fact, they were like almost 2 hours spread apart from each other. Okay, Rey was actually talking to Luke, and she was like inside of a tree. And here's what makes it so bad. Again, watch that trailer again for The Last Jedi. They color corrected. They did color correction on Rey to make it match the background of where Kylo was. Because in the movie, she's in like this kind of just like dark, almost bluish hued, kind of almost purplish area, and Kylo's in this very red area. When you watch the trailer, you're going to see like they must have put some kind of like red filter over it effectively to make it look like Rey was in the same place as Kylo. That's outright lying. Like, I think, and this is something, I don't know if I've talked about on Sovryn Tech Prime episodes, but on Patreon episodes, I've talked about this. There's going to be a point, now look, I don't believe in dealing with the justice system, okay? But if I was to speak conventionally as a good American citizen, I would be suing Disney right now. Because, I mean, like, there is such a thing as false advertising, right? If you put on a box, like, say for a PlayStation 3 or something, that this can run Linux and suddenly it can't run Linux anymore, you engaged in false advertising. That's a real story, by the way. Okay. And so at some point, I think trailers need to fall. I mean, like, this is getting really out of hand. Like, that's full on false advertising, and it's all to hook people in. And I mean, everything else that was going on in that. Now, one of the things I think actually in the opposite effect of what happened is that some people said, I mean, like, the trailers told some truths, right? Because some people said, oh, that wasn't actually, like, Kylo wasn't really, they made it look like he was going to shoot at his mother, at General Organa, or, Leia, but he really wasn't. No, actually ends up, yeah, he was. So the trailer did kind of give you like a pretty big reveal. You just didn't notice it. Okay. Now, I mean, the same hint of, like Kylo wanting Rey to join the dark side was in the movie, but the trailer made it seem like Rey wanted to join the dark side and that she was tempted by the dark side. That would seem to be like, or at least by Kylo, she was tempted by the dark side or something. While she certainly delves into it to some degree in the film, no, like that's not there. That's pure on false advertising, and I think that's actually really shitty to do. And there's a lot more of this. Okay, like when there was the announcement about Benicio del Toro that he would play the character of DJ. Now, in the movie, the character of DJ is probably one of my favorite aspects of this film. Benicio del Toro is a fantastic actor. The character is awesome. He's a total egoist. He has the best line of the movie where he's like explaining to Finn, to John Boyega's character. He's explaining to Finn, look, like these people here, because they're at this casino planet called Canto Bight, which was probably the only really bad part of the film, if there's a bad part of the film. Not that it was bad, it was just, it didn't match with everything else that was going on. So, he's explaining, he says, how do you think these people get this rich? It's because they're funding both sides of this war. They sell weapons to the resistance, they sell weapons to the First Order. It's like, it's both ways, it's like, and he makes this line where he says, look, how you get through all this? Live free, don't join. And that's actually what according to the visual dictionary, his initials DJ, which they never say his name in the movie, but we knew ahead of time that he had the initials DJ. The initials DJ, people were thinking that it meant Dark Jedi. It actually meant don't join. Like, literally, that's what it means. In fact, on his hat, he has a little like insignia on his hat, like some writing, some glyphs. What they translate as is don't join. So like that's just who he is, and I love that sentiment. Fuck yeah, live free, don't join movements. I mean, and like the character says it. He says sooner or later, they're going to put you through the meat grinder. I mean, that's kind of the point that gets made. And they talk about it a little bit more in the visual dictionary. They give a little bit more on that character. But that's another case, this character of DJ, where, oh yeah, he's this classic man in black. Oh, we got Benicio del Toro. Oh, this is such a big deal, blah, blah, blah. The guy was in the movie for all of maybe 10 minutes. Like, total screen time, maybe 5. I mean, practically nothing. He was barely there. And they made it seem like he's going to be this big deal character. Now, here's the thing. Okay, here's the thing with this, is that you had back in, so like I said, I've been a Star Wars fan my whole life, and I remember in 98, 97, 98 and all this, when episode 1 got announced and StarWars.com was covering the production of it and everything. This back in, the internet in the 90s when not everybody was on the internet. And one of the first major announcements for episode 1 was this character named Rick Olay. Okay. Do you know who Rick Olay is? No, you probably don't. Even if you watched episode 1 a million times, you probably don't know who that is. Okay. Even if you liked, the Phantom Menace, you probably don't know who that is. He's the guy that pilots Queen Amidala's cruiser, her Nubian cruiser. That's, right. Yeah. The Naboo cruiser or whatever, but they, Nubian. Anyway, that's the guy. He's on screen for all of a couple minutes, but the write-up on him on StarWars.com and like him being the first big reveal of information, I remember my friends and I were like, oh man, okay, so this guy, like, because they'd even said in the write-up, it said he's this Han Solo-esque character and all this stuff. It's like, oh, this guy's going to be a badass. Wow, this is going to be really cool. The guy's in it for 2 minutes and he barely says anything. He has like no bearing in the, like, far smaller part even than DJ's, even than Benicio del Toro's. And so, like, and we were really mad about that. We were like, well, what the hell? Like, they made it seem like this guy was going to be this big deal. And I feel like they did the same thing with DJ, with Benicio del Toro. It's like, oh, yeah, this guy's going to be this classic man in black. He's going to be this really, big deal. He was nothing. I mean, he was cool, and we're going to get a one-shot comic of him in January, which, that's great because the guy deserves some backstory. But, like, I mean, he's not that big of a deal at all. And this leads to one of the most important points that I want to get out in this podcast. Now, there's some Star Wars podcasts that they just kind of do reviews of things that come out, and they just talk about little stuff and have fun with it and whatever, and that's great. Like Resist the Empire podcast is great. I'll never stop listening to that. Okay, but overall, and then there's like the Star Wars show, which is actually run by Lucasfilm and Disney. The Star Wars show. Like, those are probably the only two forms of Star Wars media that I'm ever going to watch from here on out. I mean, I want to see, kind of the aftermath of what happens with The Last Jedi. So I'll watch like, Collider Jedi Council and some of these others, but I absolutely will not sit through any more conversations. And I've engaged in these too, but now I know better after seeing The Last Jedi. Like, everything, the point I was trying to make over what I was just describing is that all the hype, all of the, official or otherwise, all of the hype, everything that was released ahead of time, all this stuff was portraying a movie that this ended up not being. Even the teaser trailer had its problems where it said, like, it made it hint at, oh, we were going to go beyond the Jedi, right? Like Mark Hamill says, I only know one truth. It's time for the Jedi to end. He never even says I only know of one truth in the movie. Again, it's false advertising. Like, and then he's saying, it's like, what do you feel? And Rey says, oh, I feel the darkness, the light. I feel a balance. And Luke says, it's so much bigger. Like, none of those themes exist in this movie. Like, I was totally expecting, not just because I wanted it to be a thing, I was totally expecting to get into like the concept of a gray Jedi where you're mixing dark and light and all this stuff. None of that happened. Hell, even the title, The Last Jedi, is bullshit. If the end of the movie is to be believed, because Luke comes right out and says, no, like, because Kylo says, like, after I kill you, the Jedi will be gone, blah, blah. And Luke effectively, I mean, I'm not quoting verbatim, but that's the gist. And Luke very expressly says, no, everything you just said was wrong. And the Jedi books continue on. I mean, you thought that the Jedi books got burned up, by Yoda in that tree, the original Jedi books that they find, which they don't explore any of that at all. That was another problem. No, and we're going to get into that after this. No answers really given, or if there were answers, it was all just like, nah, just throw it away. It was all meaningless, whatever. But like, you never get into anything that they don't dive into what these like ancient Jedi texts actually say. But they did get saved. We know that by the end of the film. So, but this concept that you were constantly getting led to believe and getting sold in the trailers and by a lot of other media that, oh, we're going to go beyond this. It's not, there won't be any more Jedi, blah, blah, blah. Nope. Totally fucking untrue. It's so infuriating. So anyway, like a lot of these other Star Wars podcasts, like I'm not going to listen to them at all. I'm not interested. I'm done. Because all they do is if I, for months we had to hear how, and it's only been, a couple of years between films, between, episode 7, let's say, and episode 8, The Last Jedi. But we had to hear, DJ is Ezra. Who are Rey's parents? Who is Snoke? Who is this? Blah, 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 blah. All these different theories. And The Last Jedi tossed all of that right out the window. Even like Snoke, they fucking off Snoke like nothing. Like he's a chump. They just kill him and they give no explanation of anything. And I think that that's kind of shitty. And I'll tell you, I think J.J. Abrams had very different things in mind. I really do. Speculation. I think he had completely different things in mind. I mean, even Snoke in this and Snoke in The Force Awakens and Snoke in The Last Jedi look like two different things. I know one's a hologram, whatever, but I think they changed their mind, the direction that they were going to go with this. Okay. And that's what happens when you don't have one guy telling the story. When you start splitting it up, like you have, okay, JJ will write this one, then Rian Johnson will write this one, then JJ will write this one. In fact, like Mark Hamill was really mad at the direction that Luke was going in. I think, and now I understand what he meant by that, because I kind of agree. But I think that I think if Mark Hamill knew that this was the direction Luke Skywalker was going to end up going with the direction that he did in Episode 8, I don't know that he would have signed up. I mean, yeah, the money would have been great, so he probably would. But I don't know. I think there were very different plans laid out with The Force Awakens. I think Rey's parentage. I mean, now you find out in The Last Jedi, her parents are nothing. I mean, these are like the conversations that are being had all the time. And look, I understand that all of that, like Snoke could come back. I mean, look, Darth Maul can come back from getting split in half. Why can't Snoke? I mean, and I've heard the theories that, Darksiders could maybe transfer consciousness or something, or maybe he's just straight dead. Maybe that's the fact. Kylo could be lying about who Rey's parents are, because I mean the way that the movie kind of explains that Kylo figures out Rey's parents is it seems like that Snoke actually kind of gives him like all this inside information, and Snoke is the one that creates the bridge between Rey and Kylo to where they can see into each other's minds and everything. And Kylo finds out, oh yeah, like your parents are nothing. And so that could have been implanted by Snoke or whatever, who the hell knows. Okay. So maybe we could find out in Episode 9 that all of this is bullshit. But I mean, that's such a crazy ride to go on. And I know that back, when Empire Strikes Back came out in 1980, back then when you actually had time in between films to really like settle on things, between 1980 and 1983 when Return of the Jedi came out, a lot of people were asking, it's like, oh no, Vader was lying. He's not really his dad. That's not true. He was lying. But it ended up that he wasn't lying, but in this case, maybe Kylo's lying, or maybe he was fed false information somehow, or, whatever. But then that's going to be JJ like having to change everything up. But I feel like Rian Johnson was just like, okay, yeah, I don't like some of the direction JJ was going, so I got to dump his theories and I've got to move on. Even like Luke tossing the lightsaber, like, Rey hands him the lightsaber and he just tosses it behind him. I get it. I appreciate the sentiment. I understand what was being said there. Okay. But you just had The Force Awakens make such a huge deal out of this. Like, it was so improbable that anybody would find this lightsaber in the first place. Why bring it all the way back just for that one little point of fucking laughter? What the hell? And, real quick, like I said, this was a great movie. This movie was funny as hell. Like, all of the jokes absolutely landed. Some of them, it almost felt too funny. Kind of like we were talking about with the 3-hour version of Superman the movie, where I can see where they cut down a lot because you didn't need that many laughs because it took away from the potential seriousness of the film. This film bordered on getting too funny, but every joke was fucking hilarious. I mean, this is a very, very funny movie. It just adds to its overall greatness. So anyway, I felt like, yeah, and another thing, I think that JJ had a very clear point in mind of where he wanted to go with Luke Skywalker, and I don't think it's the direction of being like this guy who is tired of, I mean, what the fuck? You go to Luke Skywalker's like, I came to this island to die. You go, why? If you just want to die, why go to the fucking origin, planet, Octu, of the Jedi to go and turn off your force powers and die? It just doesn't, I mean, so much of this just doesn't compute. It all just felt like Rian Johnson needed to crush all these theories, get rid of all these theories. And then that's the thing, is that every theory that anybody came up with was wrong, was nonsense. And most of the time, and that's kind of a point I'm getting at. Most of the time, a lot of these podcasts, they just spend the whole time talking about, oh, is this person going to do this? Is this person going to do this? There's no point. There's no point in theorizing this shit anymore. Don't bother, because they will either pull the rug out from under you, either on purpose or just because another writer moves in, and you have no actual cohesion between the films, okay, to where you could make those kind of guesses. And I think, look, George Lucas has a ton of problems, okay? I think that is a problem when you don't have somebody who really has an overall idea of where these stories need to go. That is a genuine problem. When you don't have like a creative vision, you run into this. And it just felt off. I felt like that The Force Awakens was asking so many questions. You got no answers in The Last Jedi. And I understand nobody was really interested in Snoke as a villain. Okay, fine. Make it interesting. You had 2.5 hours. Make it fucking interesting. I could make a character interesting in 2.5 hours. And in all the novels and comics and everything and all the tie-in material, we keep hearing about this, like there's some kind of danger coming from the unknown regions in the Star Wars galaxy. Okay. I mean, we're getting no payoffs. And what's so funny is like this movie was so secretive. I thought that the reason, and I could say that this is my own bias, that the reason that this movie was being so secretive, okay, and that they were, and why the tie-in material was centering around like, the original trilogy and not wanting to deal with the future so much, was because they didn't want to let any cats out of the bag. But this movie wasn't secretive because there was any kind of like big reveals. The Force didn't change. Like there wasn't any, oh wow, this is totally reinterprets our the way we understand the Force, which is what really was being, in my opinion, hinted at. That none of that was a part of this. It was just because it was going to be that shocking. And I agree that like this movie was shocking in a lot of points. And I'm not saying that those shocks were bad. I'm saying in light of the rest of the Star Wars universe, it just doesn't, I don't know, or not the rest of the Star Wars universe, but in light of The Force Awakens and in light of all of the news and all of the reveals and everything that's been going on over the past 2 years in the production of this film, they don't add up. They don't add up at all. Okay. Now, I don't think there's some like secret version of this movie. It's not like Rogue One where we know for an absolute fact that there are 4 different versions of that film. We know that. No, I mean, look, it's not a debate. Ben Mendelsohn, a whole bunch of the fucking trailer for Rogue One. Like, do you even get half those scenes that are a trailer in Rogue One in the actual movie Rogue One? No, they're not there. Yeah. So I'm just saying that everything that we were getting like led to, the questions we were supposed to be asking and all this stuff were all meaningless. And that's fine. If you want to trash all that, that's okay. But like also, it's very enlightening to me and a little enraging to me. Again, Last Jedi is a great movie. What I'm saying is that I am done buying into the hype machine that exists around Star Wars. And I'm not saying the hype machine is necessarily a bad thing. Okay. It was exciting to be talking about a lot of these theories, to be talking about a lot of this other stuff. But they were theories based off of I mean, yeah, some of them were stupid, okay, but like Snoke is Mace Windu, come on, okay, but I'm saying like some of these theories were based on shit that was going on. In fact, you know what? So my favorite Snoke theory, how about this? My favorite Snoke theory was that it was Darth Plagueis, and people talked about that. The main hint there was that because the music that was used in The Force Awakens when you see Snoke is the same music from Episode 3 when Chancellor Palpatine is talking about Darth Plagueis. Now, here's a funny thing. So this is from the Visual Dictionary, okay? When they're talking about Snoke. Snoke wears, he has very elaborate attire and everything, and he's wearing these rings. Now, on his rings are, again, this is right in the visual dictionary, this is canon. There's writing on his rings, and they're called Duwadi, they're glyphs, and the language is Duwadi. Now, Duwadi is a system, the Duwadi system. Do you want to know, and again, this is in the Last Jedi visual dictionary. Do you want to know where the one time outside of a reference book, the one piece of fiction, granted this is from the old continuity, not the new one, but the old where the Duwadi system is mentioned, where the Duwadi are mentioned at all? Guess what novel? Darth Plagueis. I mean, it's like, what the hell? I mean, it's almost like you're throwing bones or you're teasing people. You're fucking, and that's the thing, is I feel like Lucasfilm just wants to fuck with the fans and like come up with little things to get everybody talking, but then there's no payoff. And I'm just done. I'm done. Like, I'm not going to listen to fucking Jedi Council anymore. I'm not going to, I'll go into, I know when a Star Wars movie is going to come out. I don't even know if I'm going to watch the fucking trailer. Maybe I'll watch the teaser trailer, but I don't even know if I'm going to watch the trailer because I know it's not going to be, or at least if I watch it, I'm going to say, well, that's not the movie I'm going to see. That's nice. Those are some pretty visuals. That's not the movie I'm going to see. And trailers weren't always that way. Trailers used to, granted, trailers are a fine art, but trailers used to have to actually show you what a movie was about. They used to give you a little bit of story. And I if you need me to, I can bring up classic examples of trailers, of how to do trailers right and how they explain what's going on. Or if you don't want to explain what's going on, then just fucking tease it. Like, there's the trailer. I remember the trailer for Star Trek VI, one of the greatest trailers of all time. The original trailer for Star Trek VI, where, it just told you, hey, you've been on these adventures with this crew and now they're coming back for one final adventure. Join us for Star Trek VI. Perfect. You didn't have to show a goddamn thing. Good. You don't have to reveal what's happening in the movie. You're just like, it's the final adventure. That's all you need to say. Star Trek VI. Go see it. And I would have been hooked. And that's what they did. That's a mark of a great trailer. So I have no problem with this movie. My only problem with this movie and my only disappointment with this movie is that it doesn't live up to any of Lucasfilm's releases or hype about it. It doesn't match up to their trailers. It doesn't match. I mean, it just doesn't match up to any of that. And then I am done with, like, in a very real sense, with the more official, shall we say, more official capacity of kind of the Star Wars fandom. I'm done with the, I mean, yeah, like I said, I'm going to listen to Resist the Empire podcast. I'm going to watch the Star Wars show, because just tell me when new books are coming out. I need to know that. You can give me a review of the book. That's fine. Give me all that stuff. But, as far as like, oh, what's going to be happening? What do I think is going to be? I mean, like the show Collider Jedi Council, like kind of the basis of that show is sort of like Sports Center saying, okay, this is what's going to be coming up. All right. I think this is going to mean this. This is going to mean this. All of it ended up being untrue. It all ended up being bullshit. And I'm just like, I invested so much time in that, and I'm done. I'm absolutely done. I'm still going to do Star Wars updates for Patreon, but they're going to be what they've been, largely review shows of reviews of Rebels, reviews of books, reviews of comics, and just some other fun stuff. But it sure as fuck, I'm not going to get into the theory game anymore. Not for a fucking second. I'm not even going to waste my time, because Disney will just say, fuck you. So anyway, now for another little criticism of this film. Wow, I have so many things that I wanted to talk about with this. In fact, here's another part. All right, let's stick with criticizing Lucasfilm a bit. So in the interview material for a lot of this, two people in particular, a couple interviews in particular that were brought up. Now, Lucasfilm has been selling a lot of this tie-in material, books, comic books, video games, whatever, that this is official, this all has meaning. The books that you read are as real as the movies that you watch in Star Wars. Now, this is very exciting for fans, because that means you get to enjoy this material, and you get to enjoy real adventures in the Star Wars universe, even when we only get one movie a year usually. Okay, which that's still amazing, right? I mean, I still feel so fortunate to get a Star Wars movie a year. Understand, everything I'm saying here, I still love Star Wars. I still love Star Wars to death. Like, please don't confuse what I'm saying. And like I said, The Last Jedi is a great movie. I'm just saying there's problems. I said this at the beginning of the show. There's problems outside of it. Okay. So there were interviews. Laura Dern, who played Amilyn Holdo, who Amilyn Holdo, she has the purple hair in the movie. Amilyn Holdo, really cool character. She originally appeared in a canon book that came out in September by the great Claudia Gray. The book is Leia, Princess of Alderaan, one of the best Star Wars books to just ever come out. It was tremendous. So her character's in that, of course, a very young version of her, but she's in that. And you get this awesome introduction, and it's like, oh, this is so cool. We know the history between her and Leia. This is so nice, blah, blah, blah. There was an interview on, being done actually by Collider as well, where they interviewed Laura Dern. And, how do you feel about having, how do you feel about this, past history that you had with Leia and all this stuff, but, based upon the book and everything. And look, I don't know how I can make this abundantly clear. Nobody's required to read these books. Like, I mean, I'm not saying, oh, you have to, if you want to love Star Wars, you have to read these books. If you want to be a part of Star Wars, you have to read these books. I'm not saying anything like that. These people are actors and whatever. They have lives. They have, I'm sure, very busy schedules. They have a life. Okay. They don't choose to spend it reading Star Wars books. I have no problem with that. I'm not insulting Laura Dern. I am sure as fuck not ever going to insult Mark Hamill. Not for 1 second. All right. But Laura Dern had no idea. And couldn't at least somebody at Disney say, hey, so yeah, Laura, look, we want you to know, so your character is actually, I mean, and maybe give her the high notes, give her an outline, of like a 1-page, little primer saying, so this is your character. Yeah, she was actually in this book and everything. Laura Dern had no idea. And it's like, oh, yeah. And then Mark Hamill comes out and he had that interview where he says, well, the reason I think you went to this island is because, I came up with this whole backstory and everything and all this stuff. And and apparently somebody even asked him more or less, and some of the details and all this are sketchy, but it's like, no, we actually, we explain all this. There's the book Bloodlines that kind of talks about a lot of it. And he had no idea. And it's a little disappointing with Mark Hamill because, he's a nerd. I mean, he's a full-on comic book nerd. I mean, he's all into science fiction. He reads all the shit. He knows the score, and it's just look, Lucasfilm just doesn't care. Yeah, you got the story group, and good for them, and they're probably just running damage control all the time, to make sure that everything kind of fits and whatever, because they know they're going to get shit from the hardcore fan base. And understand, you've got a whole other generation of hardcore fan base growing up, and they're growing up thinking that all of these books matter. So you're going to have to pay off eventually. Okay. But it just sucks that I get it. Kathleen Kennedy knows, the head of Lucasfilm, she knows she's going to do billions every year when she comes out with a Star Wars movie, at least for the next few years. And they don't care. And that's it. And the books and the novels, whatever else, they just don't care. And I don't know if it's because maybe these books and novels aren't selling very well or something. Well, I'll tell you, part of the reason they're not selling very well is because a lot of them aren't giving us any actual meat to what's going on. It's all hints at things and blah, blah, blah. When, I thought that maybe they were just kind of, beating around the bush because there were going to be these crazy huge reveals in The Last Jedi, and that, they needed to wait for that, before they could really start having books that take place between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens and all this, no, there was no crazy reveals. The Star Wars universe didn't change forever when I watched The Last Jedi. There wasn't some new understanding of the Force. There wasn't some new understanding of history that had bearing on any other Force user that goes on going forward. None of that was a part of it. There's no reason not to be telling tons of wild ass stories with Han Solo, Luke Skywalker, and Princess Leia that have deep meaning and have deep consequences and all this. There's no point. So I don't know what the fuck they're doing. Lucasfilm is really fumbling, and I feel like, and here's the other thing too, is that, again, like I said with The Last Jedi, this is the first time where I really felt like this was a Marvel movie. In fact, Luke has a line in it where he says, not everybody really, nobody really ever goes away. And I think that was almost a tacit admission that, guess what, at any given moment, nobody really dies. Hell, we'll even bring Han Solo back. You just wait. And that's a Marvel movie where that's the thing of these comic book movies. There's never going to be any real consequences. There just really isn't. There's Luke so the treatment of Luke in this movie, I don't necessarily mind it. Like, I mean, it's fine. I really needed, me personally, and I think I'm not the only one, I think a lot of people, we really needed a Luke Skywalker movie where Luke's in his prime as a Jedi and he's kicking ass. And we have not gotten that yet. There's a million opportunities where they could have done that. This movie was not the place for that, but that should have happened somewhere. We should have been getting, instead of a Solo movie coming out in 5 months in May, we should be getting a young Skywalker or a younger Luke Skywalker movie that gave us the Luke that we've been dying for, to get back since 1983. I agree. If Mark Hamill said he can't believe the direction that it went, I agree with him. I kind of can't believe the direction that it went because, you got this tease into The Force Awakens and then we end up with the Luke of The Last Jedi, which let's be clear about this. The coolest moment in that movie, unquestionably, was, in my opinion, was, when they're on Crate and he's facing down the ATM sixes and he's facing down Kylo and everybody there, and they just start blasting him. Of course, it's in what chalks up to a Jedi version of an astral projection. But like when the blasting, I mean, they're just blasting the shit out of him and he's just standing there and then he just kind of brushes off his his robe. Oh man, that was awesome. That was so cool. And the couple minutes of fighting that we got between him and Kylo, of course, again, you find out eventually it really wasn't Luke. Like, I mean, that was amazing. Like that was, all of that was so cool, but that wasn't really enough. And especially when you find out that it wasn't really real, I don't know, that felt kind of cheap. That really felt kind of cheap. Man, yeah. I don't mind the direction that they went. I think there's a lot of payoffs that needed to happen that didn't happen. That's where there's any disappointment. And then any other disappointment around the film isn't with the film itself. The film is great. What was put before us, what was presented to us was amazing. It was awesome. It was great. It was not what anybody expected, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't great. It was fantastic. Okay. It's not, I mean, like I said, it's one of the best Star Wars films made. I mean, just straight. It's fantastic. Okay. But yeah, there's a lot of things that I think there was a lot of expectations, and you can say, well, but they can fuck. Yeah. Yes, they can fuck all the expectations. I know, but they're still there. Okay. They're still there. That you still wanted Luke, people still wanted Luke to do this. And anybody that's honest, come on. Would you like to have seen Luke Skywalker break out the green lightsaber and go to town? Yes or no? Answer the question. Whoever the hell says no, I think is ridiculous and a liar. Of course you wanted to see him do that. Now, that doesn't mean Lucasfilm has to do that, but we can still be disappointed, that didn't happen. And there's, there's so many different payoffs, like Rey's parentage. Again, we could find out and this is again kind of a problem because we could find out in the next movie, whatever episode 9 is going to be titled and whatever J.J. Abrams is going to do with it, we could find out that, J.J. Abrams could reverse course from everything that Rian Johnson did in The Last Jedi. That really could happen. And I'm kind of disappointed that can happen. One of the appeals to having a broader canon is that you can kind of guess how things work. You can kind of figure things out. Now I feel like you just can't figure anything out because they'll toss everything around. And I'm sure as fuck, please, I hope, in fact, I'm going to call people out. And I'll even tweet at Collider and whatever other Star Wars podcast out there. If they start laying out any theories as to what's going to happen, I'm just going to be like, okay, yeah, how did your last theories work out? Because everybody was wrong. It's so bad. There should be no outside of reviews of books and things like that. And, maybe just having some fun talk of how cool something was or whatever, or, your interpretation of actions that happened with the character. As far as any projecting the future of what's going to be going on in Star Wars that might as well completely stop. That whole industry, and that is an industry, just needs to, if I only know one truth, it's time for that industry to end. How about that? So anyway, Let me look at, I do have like a few notes of things that I wanted to make sure I got out there, and we are kind of running along. Yeah, one other thing that seemed to be a really big deal, that we're like the first, I want to say it was almost the first Star Wars comic that we were given, and it was the first, or at the very least, it was the first one out of the new canon that took place after Return of the Jedi, that being Shattered Empire, which was a pretty cool comic. It seemed to be the big deal behind that was this idea of finding these saplings of trees that belong to the Great Tree at the Jedi Council on Coruscant. Now, people immediately, when you watch, when you saw the trailers even for The Last Jedi, you're like, oh man, that this tree that we're seeing that's holding these books, is this one of those, is this one of those saplings from Shattered Empire? A lot of people were wondering about that. In fact, there was even whole videos made theorizing that it was, right up until like hours before The Last Jedi finally, was released on the 14th. And I get it, that's an industry, like I said, that industry just needs to die. But now in the visual dictionary, they call them Uneti trees, or they call it a Uneti tree, the one that's on Octu. And I don't know, I don't have any official word on whether or not like that those saplings from Shattered Empire or that the Great Tree is also a Uneti tree. But if they are, I mean, Yoda just sets it on fire, so those trees don't fucking matter. But then Shattered Empire was making it seem like, oh, this is a really big deal. This Luke Skywalker, risked his life to, in front of an entire Imperial garrison to rescue a couple of saplings from this fucking tree. Gee, this tree must be fucking important. Nope, Last Jedi, light it on fire. So, I mean, that seems to be the story of The Last Jedi. Okay, anything that was getting laid out, just light it all on fire. Now, one thing I didn't mind, like they pretty much wiped out the resistance to an amount of people that could fit an entire, like literally the entire resistance, or now I guess it's the rebellion again, if the movie's verbiage is to be believed. They pretty much wiped it out to where it's an amount of people that could just fit on the Falcon. Like, I don't mind that. Like, I think that's kind of, that's interesting, as far as that goes. So, okay, wow, geez, I'm looking at my notes here. There's a million things I want to talk about. Phasma still alive. Yeah, I think Phasma survived that. It looks like Phasma dies. She falls into this like fiery thing. If you read, well, here I am. See, now I'm already getting into it where I'm predicting, based upon tie-in stuff that came out. So, because there's a lot of tie-in material about Captain Phasma, and this was another failure. How long did we get Phasma? Didn't they say that they were going to correct that, where we're going to get a lot of Phasma in this movie? We got all of maybe 5 minutes, and you did all this tie-in material that was a build-up to Phasma. I mean, if that tie-in material has any meaning, it talks about her being a survivor, so I'm assuming that means that's hinting at that she survived. But what's the point to assuming? Because if J.J. Abrams says, well, no, actually, I'm going to agree with Rian Johnson on this one. No, she died. And I mean, what the fuck? You don't know where to go with any of this. Okay. The moment, this was an awesome moment. I actually liked it. I understand the critiques of people that didn't. When Leia, you think that she dies, which was tough because you're like, oh shit, did she really actually die? Because we know Carrie Fisher's gone, so this is hurting. And then she uses the Force and like looks like Mary Poppins and kind of flies back to the Radis, which is the name of the ship. That was really cool. It felt, the way that they showed it and portrayed it, the outfit she was wearing, everything about it, definitely felt like a Disney movie. And I'm not saying necessarily that's bad, but I'm also not necessarily saying that that's good. I thought the Force power was very interesting. It did lead to kind of a contradiction in the film. Like, if Leia can hold back the forces of outer space, I'm pretty sure she could lift some rocks on Crate to get them to allow the resistance, what remains of the resistance, to escape. Obviously, Rey didn't need to do that. That didn't make any fucking sense to me. But okay, I mean, that was an awesome power to show, but that was kind of weird to not allow her to do kind of more with it. But okay, maybe she was weak. Who knows? The scene in Canto Bight. So this is this is Las Vegas in space, effectively. This had a very weird, and the whole mission, it really did seem out of place for this movie. It also did not feel, this is the one part where it did not feel like Star Wars, because it literally just looked like Las Vegas in space. Now, there is an entire book, an anthology that came out, which is canon, that came out beginning of December, called Canto Bight. I have read it. I'm not going to review it here. I'm going to do that on Patreon, but I have some further thoughts on this whole matter. But in the movie, it really didn't work. It didn't. I get where it fits in the plot, but it just, I don't think that it worked. And I think it's like the one moment that took away from really, I mean, it's hard to believe this movie's 2.5 hours long. You don't feel it. Like, it's just the pace. It is fast paced. It keeps going, and I credit to it for that. But Canto Bight kind of takes you out of that for a minute. And I don't think you needed the breather. Maybe it was there because it allowed people to go to the bathroom. I know a lot of people that did. When I go and see the movie again, and if I have to go to the bathroom, I'm just going to wait for the Canto Bight sequence to go to the bathroom, quite frankly. But it had, it was a moment to kind of, well, it served kind of there's three things that it did allow for. It allowed for kind of the broom scene, which is also another very Disney aspect. The broom scene at the end with the kid. If that didn't feel like Fantasia, I don't know what to tell you. And I don't know, something about that felt really off. But yeah, so there's this weird like environmentalism message that you get that Star Wars has been hinting at, like with the space whales and Rebels and everything that Filoni did. That Star Wars has really been hinting at. There was also a very very hard and heavy rhetoric on kind of a very eat the rich kind of rhetoric going on with with the whole Canto Bight sequence, where all these people, they can only be this wealthy because they're war profiteers. They're the wealthy are evil, blah blah blah. That was a very heavy fucking message that got put on in this film, and that all of that felt a little strange. Kelly Marie Tran was great as Rose. What an awesome character. I think she's got something special. Of course, just like Rian Johnson did to The Force Awakens, J.J. Abrams could just say, oh, yeah, well, we'll kill her in the first minute. Because there's no real need to, care what the last person was setting up, it appears, with these films. And yes, in the abstract, no, there is no reason for them to actually care. There's no moral standing that they need to do that or something, but it's just, I don't know, it feels weird. So anyway, yeah, that was cool. And, but that lends to something else. Finn. Great acting, no problem with John Boyega, but wow, did I think his character get downplayed in this quite a bit. I really don't think that, they didn't, he was a driving force in The Force Awakens, and he wasn't exactly there so much in this film, which I thought was kind of interesting. Another thing that wasn't in this film this is another thing where I think that there was a lot, when people were talking about it, I think there was a lot of hinting on Lucasfilm's part that this would be a part of it. Very little politics. You have this beautiful moment, and it's talked about right in the opening crawl of The Last Jedi, where we have a galaxy with no government. Of course, me as an anarchist, I'd say, yay, woo, let's do this, but there's no government. But they didn't really address any of that. They didn't really talk about any of that. They didn't get into any of that, which is weird because we know that in the book, the prequel book to The Force Awakens, by the great Claudia Gray, Bloodlines, Rian Johnson had a hand in that book, in the material that's in that book, and in influencing what's in that book. And that book is highly political. It's all political. So it's kind of strange that you get all these hints. It just goes back to, you got all these hints from official sources, unofficial sources, from fandom, from Lucasfilm, and all of it was wrong. All of it was total bullshit. All of it was absolutely meaningless, and that's why I say the only problems with this film exist outside of it. The film itself, by and large, minus the Canto Bight thing, I thought, like I said, great, amazing, awesome film. And I think I'm gonna wrap it up there. A lot of people are talking about, all right, one last point real quick. A lot of people are talking about how great Mark Hamill did. I don't know if everybody just lost faith in Mark Hamill, or if they forgot about Guyver and the Wing Commander series and everything. This guy never stopped. you know, like and in fact, some people are saying this is his best acting ever. No, Colonel Blair, you know, in Wing Commander, that was his best acting ever. He was fantastic in that, because it was like, I think in many ways it was Mark Hamill kind of come to life. But yeah, I don't, I mean, fine, people want to nominate him for an Oscar and all this crap, you know, obviously I don't mind if Mark Hamill gets any kind of awards, but no, you know, this is not Mark Hamill's acting at its best. He did great, but I've seen better, you know, I've seen like roles that where he really shone in, you know, and certainly, I mean, I think his acting was tremendous in Return of the Jedi, obviously. So yeah, well, anyway, I don't want to end it on that note, because again, this movie was really, really solid. Like I said, I'm going to see it so many times. Maybe I'll feel different about it after watching it a few times. Maybe I need to sit on it a little bit more. But the thing is there isn't anything really to feel different about. There's only like things that maybe I missed that explain better, which is hard to, I mean, I guess I can miss things, but I don't know. I don't think so. You know, also another point I wanted to bring up, it makes it very clear, like, and I mean, yeah, boy, the thing with Snoke, you could have made that interesting. You could have, if you tried, you know, but they offed him. It's like, oh, what the fuck? I mean, the visual dictionary does make it clear that he's not a Sith. Like it says he is no Sith. So he's not Darth Plagueis. You know, let's put that to bed. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that character does come back, but oh, fuck. You know, just what this movie really showed is that Lucasfilm's going to do whatever they want. And honestly, I think you get plenty of hints, real hints, abstract hints, not anything that's like prophesying a storyline to come, but you get real hints that, you know, just because somebody dies or anything like that in any of these movies, they'll be back. You know, like these are very much Marvel and Disney films now. I think, not saying that that's inherently bad, but we're going to have to see how this all shapes up going forward. Yeah. So The Last Jedi, awesome. Everything surrounding it is shit. I'm really disappointed in a lot of the way Lucasfilm is treating the tie-in material, the way that, I don't know, there's a lot that just seems like I would have even, you know what, the Plagueis theory was so hot, I would have just done it. You know, just to be like, oh yeah, no, you guys, yeah, you can actually guess things. Even if that wasn't your original plan, if you're just going to off him in the next movie, then just make him Plagueis and then off him. You know, like it really seems insensitive. You know, I would have, if I had that kind of groundswell, if I knew things like that from the fans, that the fans really wanted that, or that they thought that was going on and they thought it was cool, I would have pulled it off. I would have done it. You know, it just, I don't know. I'm concerned about the production going forward with Star Wars. I really am, because there's so much. There seems to always be so much trouble going on around it. There wasn't really any trouble reported with this film, like there was with Solo or Rogue One, but also I feel like there actually is trouble in some ways, and I think that there is a lot of things that changed. I don't, because I mean, some of the ways that they were talking about the character DJ, and the way that they're hyping up some of the other things that were going to be in this film, it feels like, I mean, we know that, you know, Rian Johnson said there's a 3-hour version of this film, but he said it's not like, that's not going to get released, and there's scenes in it now that kind of contradict what's in the movie, so you don't really want it. And I respect and I understand that, because I respect creators, you know, unlike a lot of other people. But you know, maybe there was a lot of stuff that, you know, maybe there's some serious changes. I'd love to see a lot of those scenes. Some of them I bet we'll never see, but maybe there were some explanations to be had. Maybe we'll have to wait for the deleted scenes to see where some of the stuff makes a little more sense in the broader picture. Internally, like I said, the movie's great. There's nothing, you know, there's not really anything as far as confusion or things like this, in my opinion. But I feel a lot of people where, you know, it was really disappointing. Like, there was a lot of setup going on with The Force Awakens that there was really no payoff whatsoever in The Last Jedi. And so now I go forward for episode 9. I have no expectations, none. I expect nothing. I'll continue to read all the comic books, all the books, play all the video games. I'll be all over at Star Wars because I love Star Wars, but I go with it without thinking that somehow I can figure out and tell the future of what's going to happen in the Star Wars universe, which you would hope is, I mean, again, that's part of what gets people excited about canon. But hey, Lucasfilm feels differently. So, Florida is Canto Bight, I guess. Ooh. So anyway, do see this movie. It really was awesome. I mean, there's so many great things to say about it. There's so many awesome, like, badass moments. Oh, you know what? All right, hold on. All right, I promise this will be the last. Okay. The other thing, they made such a big deal about Poe's starfighter, right? How, oh yeah, we have Fast and the Furious style, upgrades that can be done to these ships. They barely even mentioned. They didn't even mention, like, what the fuck that retro, or like that really, high speed booster that he had on the back of his X-wing. It's right at the beginning of the movie. They make no mention of it, and he just uses it, and then it's done, and they don't even talk about it. But they wrote an entire story about that thing. I don't mean like a short story or a novelization. I mean, they did a news story, like an Entertainment Weekly or something, saying, oh yeah, we got these Fast and the Furious style upgrades and everything. Like, that is so, but then, like, they don't talk about it. They don't, like, have, Rose Tico installing it or something. They don't cover any, what the fuck? That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying with this movie. The movie was awesome, but everything around it was bullshit. It was total bullshit. Like, that I can't believe that was news. What slow news day did you have that you wrote about something that was used for a whopping 30 seconds? Granted, it was very funny. Like, the first 20 minutes of that movie I thought was awesome. Like, and that line with when Poe is saying, it's like, hi, I'm calling General Hux. Yeah, I'll still hold. That was so goddamn funny. That was perfect. Yeah, that's the other thing. Get ready for a lot of laughs. This is a funny as shit movie. Like I said, almost too funny. But yeah, go see it anyway. And just next time around, my recommendation for when episode 9 comes around, like Solo, I think I might have, like, gotten a hint of all this because I stopped paying attention to what was happening with Solo. Maybe I'll feel differently when that comes out, and that's coming out in May. So we got that. But then, we have to wait until May 2018 at that point. So we got about a year and a half, or, well, no, that'd be a year, right? It won't be a year and a half for, well, yeah, anyway, whenever. Yeah, because they're not doing episode 8 in December. Everything's going to be moving into May. So we got about a year. We after May, we'll have to wait for, for 2018, I guess. Or no, 20, right. It's a year and a half until 2019 till we get okay, sorry. So we'll have to wait until 2019 until we get, episode 9, I guess. Did I get that right? I think I got that right. Yes, because Han Solo is the movie of 2018. Yeah, okay. Whatever. When in 2019, when we get episode 9, just don't pay any attention to the news coming out about it. I wouldn't read anything, and just go and see the movie. Like, and maybe not, you might want to catch the trailer once, but don't pay any attention to the trailer. The trailer will not be the trailer for Force Awakens was reflective, I think, very much of what happened in The Force Awakens. The trailer for Rogue One showed a completely different movie. Yes, it did. Really, prove me otherwise. Like, the burden of proof is on you to tell me, because I can show you the scenes that aren't in the film. The burden of proof is on you to show me that there was that wasn't a completely different film. But anyway, also, like I said, the trailer for The Last Jedi did not accurately reflect whatsoever. If anything, had blatant misdirection and more for what we end up seeing in the movies. Fortunately, what we saw in theaters was phenomenal. It was just a fantastic film, and such a great time in theater. A greater time in a theater than I've had in a long time. That was really, really good stuff. So I'll be seeing it a bunch more times, and maybe I'll report in again on it when we do the December Star Wars update on Patreon. If you want to become a patron on Sovryn Tech, just go to sovryntech.com, and that will get your hookup, and I got to wrap this baby up. So yeah, I don't know if I give it a score. I'd give it a 9 out of 10. I thought The Last Jedi was awesome. It was great. It's just, there's a lot of bullshit between the lines. So anyway, there we go. Next week's Sovryn Tech, of course, we'll get back to, I've got some very interesting stuff planned for next week's Sovryn Tech, but it won't be where I spend an entire hour and change talking about a movie. But I've got something special cooked up for you, so I won't spoil the surprise. So I'll see you next week. I will see you on the other side.